Uh, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Willy Pong. I'm Director of National Disaster Management Office from Lao PDR, and with my colleagues from Mr. Aslam from ADPC. I'd like to share with you on the Lao PDR National Disaster Database and National Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction. Next. So the development of disaster information management system in Lao PDR, actually, the Desventa methodology was inherited in Lao PDR since 2005 by UNDP and UNHDR. My office in MO uses Desventa software for systematic collection, documentation, analysis of historic disaster data related to disaster losses associated to natural hazards. Since then, the tested disaster information management system, or Desventa, was implemented as a pilot in the northern provinces of Lao PDR, Singapore province, from 2008 to 2010 under the Langkoka program with technical support by ADPC. So during that period, the standard data collection formats were developed to collect disaster information from 7 sectors, mainly agriculture, education, labor and social welfare, health, transportation, electricity, and tourism. Trainings on Desventa historic data collection and use were conducted for level 1 government officials from national and provincial level in 3 regional. Northern, central, and southern part. Training on disaster information management system was also organized for level 1 departments and in Singapore province officials. Guidelines for disaster information and communication system in Lao PDR also were developed. In addition, the national risk profile of Lao PDR also were developed in 2010. And the hazard assessment and hazard mapping were carried out based on the historical disaster events with support from UNDP and ADPC. There was additional capacity building support from UNDP carried out based on historical disaster events. The additional capacity building support, the project from UN, ISDR, NIRCA, or Corporate Assessment Report, and ADPC in systematic evidence-based disaster database and data collection from provinces during 2010 to 2011. And let's continue. So during the early 2012, a training on database development was conducted by UNDP for Lao government using Desventa system. In addition, during the last year, in MO, my office have implemented the project on strengthening institutional capacity for development of Lao PDR National Assessment Report, also called LA 2012, on disaster risk reduction. This project is under support, technical support by ADPC and UNHDR. Doing this, the technical working group, or TWG, were established. It comprises of line ministry, the key line ministry involved in the working group. That ministry are Public Works, Transport, Public Health Ministry, Planning Investment Ministry, Agriculture and Forestry, and Education. So the working group mainly to process and review and update the standard formats for data collection in each sectors, and to help enable to assess disaster risk, manage and analyze disaster data. So then disaster data collection template were developed during the past years, were reviewed and standardized. So the guideline on how to collect the data using standard template of each sector also developed. This should help guiding the local government and when they collect the data in the field. In addition, capacity of national land ministries and provinces have been increased, through the trainings on evidence-based historic disaster data collection and data analysis. So then disaster data were collected in 17 provinces in Lao PDR. INIMO was the focal organization to compile the collected data from provinces through, and the data entry analysis was also done with the support from UNHCR. And now the National Disaster Database System had submitted at INIMO. So this is the Lao National Assessment Report on Disaster Risk Reduction 2012. The objectives is to present current status of disaster risk in Lao PDR, to establish a relationship between disaster risk and poverty reduction, to guide the stakeholder in Lao PDR in mainstreaming disaster risk reduction into mainly poverty reduction strategies and programs, to contribute the Global Assessment Report of GA 2013. Next. So this is the content of the Lao National Assessment Report 2012. One is introduction, chapter 2, national risk profile of Lao PDR. The chapter 3 is information about the initial analysis of disaster in Lao PDR using Desventa. And chapter 4 is the link between poverty reduction and disaster risk reduction, and the conclusion and recommendations. So in the Lao report, and it conclude and recommendation, the Lao PDR for disaster risk reduction is an attempt to create more awareness on the overall disaster risk in the country and the impact of the disaster risk on poverty. So some of the initial recommendation, improvement of disaster data collection, institutional strengthening of comprehensive risk assessment, capacity building for probabilistic risk assessment, and last one, mainstreaming disaster reduction into poverty reduction strategies in Lao PDR.
Thank you. Just to summarize, we have 5 minutes, and then I will finish in 1, and then we can have some discussion. This is actually one of the unique example that how when we help country to develop systematic database development, and this is actually an example that over the period of 6 years, Lao has been developing this database. Now, once the database you develop, the question from the government was that what they really do from the database. And this is where UNISDR's kind support came in 2-3 times, and then actually influenced these 6 ministries that since you already have the database, why don't you try to come up with your risk profile itself. And you have seen that this particular report, actually some part of this one has already been highlighted in the GAR 13 if you look at it. But what is actually brings that by compiling the disaster data, they can generate a risk profile. But on the other side, other ministries has already compiled the data which is related to socio-economy and the poverty and others. And then this report actually brings what are the linkages between the disaster risk reduction interventions and the poverty reduction program. To sum up, we really haven't come up with a very concrete conclusion that whether disaster risk reduction initiatives has really elevated the poverty as per the information, and this is not the final report as such. But the good thing is that this particular report is owned by these 6 key ministries plus the National Statistics Bureau. And what we are actually going to do now next is that further helping the provinces to have their provincial profile based on this, because the province already have the database. So what ADPC actually has been helping, taking the help from UNISDR, is to sit with National Disaster Management Office, create the database in their office itself, train their staff, so that they themselves can generate. So we believe that this is a good example, and we are actually discussing with you and ISDR that if this model is applicable in Laos, why can't we do it in Cambodia, Vietnam, and other countries who require this kind of thing. So thank you very much. Now I open for any kind of question that you have.
Just a small query. How to start the process of developing this database at national level?
The process here used was that the National Statistics Bureau, because what we really wanted that while the disinventar as a base was used, and those who know the disinventar, it actually records data from all the other sources, including from newspapers and others. That always has been challenged, but Lao, particularly the National Statistics Bureau, had certain formats. Those formats, we looked at it 5 years ago, and then under the AUZED program, they actually looked at it that, what are some of the concrete sources of the data that go into. So once that format was validated, then it actually was sent to the provinces to start using it. And that is where I think 3-4 years of UNISDR support to train those people in the provinces. And people from here, the GAR team from here used to go there in the provinces, sit with them, then train. So once the province people just understood the value, then it was much easier and almost like a cakewalk for NDMO, because 17 provinces database finished. The experts from here go sit with NDMO, help them to understand how to analyze it. So I think once a country like Laos could have a validated data collection format, then it becomes all the things much easier.